She never told anyone what happened the night of the harvest moon gathering. Not her alpha, not her packmates, not even the old healer who had known her since she was small enough to sleep curled against a wolf's flank. She told no one, and then she told no one again when the sickness started in the mornings, and she told no one a third time when she realized the sickness was not going to pass. By the time anyone noticed, it was too late to pretend otherwise. Her name was Isolde. Wait, the list. She checked herself. Different name. She had always been Emmeline to herself, in the quiet of her own mind, before she had learned to answer to Omega and Weak Blood and the useless one who can't shift right. Emmeline. She held the name like a stone in a closed fist. She was 22 years old when they drove her out of Thornhallow Pack, in the middle of February with snow on the ground and nothing but a canvas pack on her back, and the judgment of every wolf she had ever known settled on her shoulders like a second cloak. The Alpha had not even looked at her when he read the sentence. His Beta had done it for him. Osric, broad-shouldered and flat-eyed, reading from a paper as though she were a livestock record being corrected. Conduct unbecoming. Bringing shame. Dismissed without territory rights, without wolf name, without claim. She had waited for someone to ask who the father was. No one asked. She walked north because north was the only direction that didn't have a pack settlement within 3 days. North meant the ridgeback wilderness, which meant cold and rock and nothing, and that was exactly what she needed. Nothing that could look at her, nothing that already knew her name. The child, she understood by then it was one child, not the flicker of two she sometimes felt. The child was her reason for putting one foot in front of the other when her legs wanted to give out. She talked to it sometimes, under her breath while she walked. We're almost there. Just a little further. I know it's cold. I know. She found the valley in March, when the snow was just beginning to give up at the edges. It sat between two ridges like a secret the mountains had been keeping, and the first thing she thought when she saw it was that no one would ever look for her here. The second thing she thought was that it was beautiful, in the way that hard things sometimes are. Pine trees that went up forever, a creek that ran fast and clean, and silence so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. She built the shelter in pieces, because she had no choice. She had grown up in a pack that built collectively, and she had never done any of this alone, and she made every mistake there was to make before she made it right. The first structure leaked so badly she woke up soaked 3 nights in a row. The second was better. By the time her belly was too large for her to easily bend, she had something that held heat and kept out the wind, and she called it home because she had nothing else to call it. Her daughter was born on a night in June when the sky was clear, and the creek was loud with snowmelt. Em did everything herself. She had read enough, remembered enough from the healer's casual teachings, and her wolf, weak as it was, stuttering and unreliable as it had always been, her wolf knew what to do even when she didn't. She named her daughter Brielle. Brie, for short, in her own head, though she spoke the full name out loud sometimes just to hear how it sounded in the open air. Brie had her mother's dark hair and her father's grey eyes. Em knew those eyes. She would have known them anywhere. She had been staring into them for the most confusing and terrifying hour of her life the night of the harvest moon, and she had been trying to forget them ever since. She didn't try anymore. She just raised her daughter, and she didn't let herself think too hard about what those eyes meant. 6 years passed the way years do in the wilderness, not slowly, not quickly, but in layers. Winter, then the long exhale of spring, then the short, fierce heat of summer, then the burning colors of fall, and then winter again. Em learned things she had never imagined needing to know: how to treat a wound when there was no healer, how to preserve meat for months, how to read the sky for weather, how to find her way back to the valley from anywhere in the surrounding ridge country by the angle of the afternoon light. Brie grew up knowing the names of every tree in the valley, and the calls of every bird that nested in the upper ridge. She was quick and solemn and occasionally startling in her logic, the way children are when they have spent too much time with only one adult for company. She was also, Em had begun to notice, not entirely explainable. At 4, Bree had placed both her small hands flat on Em's forearm when Em had burned it badly on the firestones, and the burn had faded in 2 days instead of 2 weeks. At 5, she had led Em directly to a deer trail Em had never found before. By some instinct she couldn't articulate. I just knew it was there, Mama. At 6, she moved through the forest with a silence that Em, despite 6 years of practice, still couldn't match. Her wolf, when it began to surface, and it surfaced early, much earlier than was ordinary, was not small and stuttering like Em's. It was something else. Something that made the other animals in the valley go very quiet. Em didn't tell anyone. There was no one to tell. The day everything changed was an ordinary Tuesday in September. Em had gone further along the North Ridge than usual, tracking a scent she didn't recognize. Not animal, or not only animal, and she had brought Bree because Bree was old enough now, and because leaving her alone in the valley was starting to feel like an error in judgment as the child's wolf grew stronger and more restless. They heard the horses before they saw them. Em stopped, put her hand on Bree's shoulder, felt her daughter go still beneath her palm in the way she always did, not frightened, just watchful, like a wolf waiting to understand a situation before deciding how to feel about it. 4 riders came through the tree line. The horses were black, every one of them. The riders wore dark riding gear, the kind of thing that said functional and expensive in the same breath, and at the front of the group was a man who Em recognized the way you recognize a thing you have spent 6 years training yourself not to think about. She recognized the shape of his jaw, the way he held himself in the saddle, the gray of his eyes, which she saw every single day in her daughter's face. Daxton Vale, High Alpha of the Northern Reach, reined in his horse when he saw her. He looked at her for a moment with an expression she couldn't read. Then his gaze dropped to Bree, standing at Em's side, with her chin tilted up and her small grey eyes fixed on his face. The expression on Daxton Vale's face changed. Em had been waiting for this moment for 6 years, and still somehow she was not ready for it. "Who are you?" he said. Not a question. More like a man trying to confirm something he already knew and didn't trust himself to accept. "We live here," Em said. Her voice was steady. She had always been better at steady than she expected. He was still looking at Bree. "Her eyes," he said. "Are her eyes," Em said. "They belong to her." Bree, with the impeccable instinct of a 6-year-old who had grown up without other children to teach her the appropriate degree of wariness toward strangers, looked up at the man on the black horse and said, "You have the same eyes as me." The silence that followed was the kind that has weight. One of the riders behind Daxton said something low. He didn't appear to hear it. He was still looking at Bree, and for the first time Em could see something in his face that she hadn't expected to see there. Not calculation, not the particular blankness of someone managing a problem, but something closer to shock, the kind that comes when reality rearranges itself around a fact you weren't prepared for. "How old is she?" he said. Em said nothing. Emmeline. Her name in his mouth after 6 years was a strange thing, like hearing a word in a language you had almost forgotten. 6, Em said, "and you don't get to speak to her or about her until you've explained what you're doing on my ridge." He looked at her then, really looked at her, the way he had not quite managed in the first moments of shock, and she felt the weight of it and refused to step back from it. "I've been tracking a disturbance in the territory for 2 weeks, he said. "Unusual energy signatures. My wolves reported something in this valley." "Something," Em said. "Someone." He paused. "I didn't know what I was going to find, and now you've found it." "Yes." Bree tugged at Em's hand. Em looked down. Her daughter was watching Daxton with an expression of solemn evaluation, as though she were a judge and he were presenting a case. "He smells like us," Bree said quietly to Em. "I know," Em said. "Is he why you don't talk about my father?" The rider directly behind Daxton made a sound that was very carefully not a laugh. Daxton Vale, High Alpha of the Northern Reach, had the grace to look like a man being appropriately confronted with the consequences of his choices. It was, Em thought, the first genuine expression she had ever seen on his face. She didn't invite them to the valley that night. She made that clear. She told them that they could make camp on the ridge and that she would speak to Daxton alone in the morning. And she told Bree only that the man with the grey eyes was someone she had met a long time ago, before Bree was born, and that they would talk about it properly when Em had thought about how to say it right. Bree accepted this with the equanimity of a child who had been raised in a place where you learned to wait out things you didn't understand. "Okay, Mama." But he seemed scared of something. Em didn't know how to tell her daughter that what he had seemed, more than scared, was undone, like a man who has spent years building a wall against something and has just found that thing standing on the other side of it, completely unaware of the wall. She lay awake most of that night. She thought about the harvest moon gathering. She had been newly presented to the broader regional packs. A formality, since Thornhallow was a minor pack, and no one much cared about its omegas, and she had been terrified in the specific way of someone who has been told their entire life that they are the least in every room they enter. The High Alpha had noticed her. She still didn't understand why. She had been nothing. She had been as small and invisible as she knew how to make herself, and he had still seen her, and she had been 22 and frightened, and entirely unable to refuse anything an Alpha King wanted when his full attention was on her. She had not told anyone because who would have believed her? She had not told him because by morning he was gone, and by the time she had understood what had happened, she was already back in Thornhallow and already starting to be sick in the mornings. She didn't tell anyone. She had made a life out of not telling anyone, and that life had produced Bree, and she could not find it in herself to regret Bree, even when she examined the whole sequence of events as honestly as she could, which was its own uncomfortable thing to sit with. In the morning she found him sitting alone at the edge of the tree line. He had sent his riders further down the ridge, and she understood that as something, not quite a peace offering, but close. "You left before sunrise," she said. He didn't pretend not to understand. "Yes. You knew. Not, you didn't know about her, but you knew something had happened." "I knew something had happened," he said. He was looking at the valley below, at the curl of smoke from her chimney, at Bree, who could be seen from here collecting something along the creek bank, moving with that silent wolf grace of hers. "I told myself I was drunk. I told myself you would have found me if there had been consequences. I told myself a lot of things." "That's convenient," Em said. "Did you believe any of them?" Less and less. She was quiet for a moment. Below, Bree crouched by the water and came up with her hands cupped round something she wanted to examine. The morning light was very clear. "I want to say something to you," Em said, "and I need you to hear it without arguing with it or managing it or deciding I don't actually mean it. All right. You knew I was afraid of you. I was 22 years old, and I had been told my entire life that I had no power and you had more power than anyone in 3 territories. You could smell my fear, you knew." She paused. "What you did, you don't get to call it a mistake. A mistake is something you didn't know you were doing. You knew." The silence between them was not comfortable. She had not said it to make it comfortable. "I know," he said. "That's all I need you to say." He looked at her. "That's all? For now?" He was quiet again. She watched her daughter find whatever she had been looking for along the creek and stand up and shade her eyes against the sun. Something turned over in Em's chest. The particular ache of having protected someone for 6 years and now standing at the edge of a change that could not be undone. She had kept Bree safe. She had kept her hidden and warm and free from the particular cruelties of pack hierarchy that Em had grown up inside. Now a man with the same grey eyes was sitting 40 feet away, and the situation had changed. "She's extraordinary," Em said, and she said it like a warning. "I can see that. She doesn't know yet what she is, what she might be. Her wolf is. It's not like mine. It's not like any wolf I've ever seen, and I've been watching it emerge for 2 years now." Daxton was very still. What does it feel like when her wolf is close? Em considered, like standing at the edge of something old, like the forest going quiet because it recognizes something that outranks it. He looked at her for a long moment. "She's a ridgecaller," he said, not like a question. Em didn't know the word, but when he said it, her skin recognized it, the way skin sometimes recognizes a truth the mind hasn't caught up to yet. "Tell me what that is," she said. "It's a bloodline that hasn't appeared in 3 generations. We thought it was gone." The ridge-callers could call wolves, call packs, call strays, call the wild ones no alpha could touch. The land responded to them. The oldest stories say a ridge-caller's loyalty had to be earned, not commanded. They couldn't be claimed by pack hierarchy or alpha decree. They chose, he stopped. If she is one, she can't be raised in a place where she's considered subordinate. The power warps, it turns inward, it goes wrong. She's been raised in a valley in the wilderness and said, she has no idea she's subordinate to anyone. He almost smiled. That explains some of what I was sensing. She also has opinions, and said, extremely strong ones, for a 6-year-old, about fairness, about whether people have behaved correctly. I'd prepare yourself. This time he did smile, and it was not the expression of a high alpha managing a situation. It was the expression of a person being surprised by something that had no political dimension whatsoever. Em filed that away. She did not go back with him. That was the first thing she made clear. She was not returning to any pack that had once owned her, not as a guest, not as a mate, not in any capacity that made her smaller than she had become out here in the silence of the mountains. He didn't argue with her. That was the first thing that made her reconsider him slightly. He came back. That was the second. 3 weeks after the first encounter, she came out of the tree line in the morning and found him sitting in the valley clearing, alone, with his horse picketed at the far end and a fire going and Bree already crouching beside him, inspecting the firestones he had arranged with the particular focus of a child evaluating someone's competence. "He did it wrong," Bree told Em seriously when she arrived. "I showed him how you do it." "She's correct," Daxton said. "I did it wrong." Em looked at her daughter, who was now explaining the proper configuration of firestones with the patience of a natural teacher, and then she looked at the man sitting in the dirt with a high alpha's quiet authority and a 6-year-old's firm corrections, and something shifted in her. Not forgiveness. Forgiveness was a longer road than 3 weeks, but the beginning of something she didn't have a word for yet, the willingness to find out. He brought a woman with him the 4th visit, Thessa, who was old enough to have known the ridge-callers of 3 generations ago, and who sat with Bree for an entire afternoon and came away with tears in her eyes, and a kind of reverence Em had never seen directed at a 6-year-old. "She's real," Thessa told Em quietly, while Daxton and Bree were arguing about whether pine beetles were interesting or not. "She's the real thing. I thought I'd never live to see it." "What does it mean?" Em said. "For her life, it means she belongs to no one and everyone chooses to protect her. It means no alpha can command her and pack law doesn't apply to her the same way. It means she'll draw wolves to her like light draws moths, and they'll follow her because they want to, not because they have to." Thessa looked at Em with an expression that was slightly complicated. It means her mother was carrying something extraordinary and was protected by it, even when she didn't know. Em thought about 6 years of a valley that never saw predators she couldn't handle, 6 years of weather that was hard but never catastrophic, 6 years of feeling, sometimes in the deep night, like something was watching the tree line. Not a threat, just watching. "I thought I was lucky," she said. "You were," Thessa said. "You just weren't only lucky." He asked her, eventually on his 7th visit, asked carefully. The way she was beginning to understand was actually his nature when he was not performing authority whether she and Bree would consider coming to the northern reach. Not to the main settlement, to a territory on the eastern edge of the reach where the land was old-growth forest and there was a community of wolves who had come there by choice, not assignment, strays and half-bloods and former rogues who had built something collectively. He had described it the way you describe something you built for one reason and are only now realizing might serve another. Em had listened. Then she had gone to Bree and described it honestly and asked what Bree thought. Bree had been quiet for a moment. Would there be other children? She asked. Yes, Em said. Bree thought again. Would I have to do what anyone told me? No one can make you do anything you don't choose, Em said. That's what you are. Bree nodded slowly. She looked at Em with those grey eyes that had come from a man Em had spent 6 years being complicated about. Okay, Bree said, but I want to keep the valley. We should come back sometimes. We can come back whenever you want, Em said. And he has to earn it, Bree said. Being trusted, Mama. I can tell you don't trust him all the way yet. That matters. Em looked at her 6-year-old daughter and thought, not for the first time, that Bree was going to be something the world was not particularly prepared for. You're right. He has to earn it. I'll help watch, Bree said. I'm good at knowing when people are lying. She paused. He doesn't lie. He just doesn't always say everything. That's different. I think he might be okay. The morning they left the valley, Em stood at the edge of the creek for a long time. The September light was falling through the pines the way it always did, particular, almost deliberate, like the valley was paying attention. She had cried here, she had been so frightened here, in those first weeks, that she had talked to the trees because there was nothing else to talk to. She had given birth here alone and looked at a small face that was already complicated and decided that complicated was fine. Complicated was what she had to work with. She had become herself here in a way she did not think she would have become anywhere else. She touched the bark of the nearest pine and said quietly, "The way you say a thing to a place that has held you. Thank you. We'll be back." Bree was already mounted, sitting in front of Daxton on the black horse, with the ease of a child who had decided someone was provisionally acceptable, and she was pointing at something in the tree line and explaining it, and he was listening with the focus of a man who understood he was being evaluated and was choosing to take it seriously. Em watched them for a moment. She thought about what Thessa had said. A ridgecaller's loyalty has to be earned. She thought about 6 years of a valley that had held her. She thought about the 22-year-old who had walked into the snow without knowing if she would survive it, and what she would say to that girl now if she could. She thought she would say, "You will be more than you know how to imagine right now. Just keep walking." She mounted her horse. The valley was still behind her, sun on the water, pines going up into the blue September sky, a place that would wait for them because it was theirs. Ahead, Bree had apparently settled whatever point she was making about the tree line and had turned to look back at her mother with an expression of cheerful impatience. "Mama," she said, "we're going." "I know," Em said. She took one more breath of cold mountain air. She turned her horse. They rode north together. The woman who had survived the mountains, the daughter who might one day call them, and the man who was beginning, slowly, to understand what it meant to earn a thing instead of taking it. The pines closed behind them. The valley kept its quiet and waited, the way the best places always do.